Hello. I can't tell if the sound on this episode is good or not because I bought a microphone. I got a toy. Hello. Is this good? I can't even tell if it's doing anything, but it lights up and I am very proud of my new toy. I'm just trying to see if it is connected or anything to anything. If I don't know. Probably should have checked this before starting to oh, I don't know. There's motion detected at the camera. We have a what do you call it? Like one of those video camera thingies that track movement and stuff, and it's just called my dad. So we're gonna put it back to its central position. Okay. So hello, does this do done? I was looking at I was thinking earlier about China's one child policy, and it's one of those things that I've always been vaguely aware of as a concept thing, because I think maybe when I was in primary school we might have learned about it, kind of, or at least stuff about interesting policies from different countries, but I wouldn't be able to tell you with my full chest if we did, or at least if it was something that I learned about just through my own kind of interests. Sorry, I was just testing to see if it turned on or off. Oh my god, it does! Oh, it's so cool. Sorry, this cost me £19.98. And I know I did say that before I didn't want this podcast to kind of, get too fancy. I wanted it to be bare bones so that if, anything went wrong and I didn't want to do it anymore, or this, that, and the third, I could, and it wouldn't be too much financial strain on me. But I was actually watching a video from a guy called Mr. Who's the Boss. He's a tech person on YouTube, and I think he even talked about the microphone that I have now, saying about, sorry, I just sniffed. He even talked about Amazon Basics and the best for your money microphone, I think, or at least the cheapest one that wasn't bad, or something along those lines. And I believe he talked about this one, and I kind of was oh, that's cool. And then I was really thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I think that perhaps maybe I should get one and kind of not, when I start wandering, I can kind of hold it and be like, hello. And hopefully the sound is a little bit more consistent. And also, I can kind of gauge whether or not I where I need to hold it, if I need to hold it right by my face, or this, that, and the other, and if I need to sit down on the table and record, because I'm gripping this for all of its worth right now. But also there was on the listing thing, because you can get different options. They had one with an arm to it, but I just wanted one with a stand, so that was less money. And also it literally just arrived and I was showing my dad, and he was like, you know what, if you asked me this 2 years ago, Sophie, I could just have picked you up one that costs a lot of money, thousands of pounds, and no one would have questioned it. Which I probably shouldn't be admitting this on a podcast right now, but it's not too popular, and I think it's chill because he retired. But my dad used to work in audio engineering, when you think of college classrooms, or college lecture theatres in America, or university and stuff like that, or just general classrooms. My dad used to be the person who would hook the projectors and stuff up. and do like sound systems. So he had access to a lot of very expensive stuff. And, not saying that you should do that, but the nature of his job meant that he could kind of buy TVs and stuff. And, I don't know, like he could get that sort of stuff and it be okay. I'm just gonna have a quick drink. So yeah, no, that was fun. And so we were just talking about that for a second, and I was like, "Can I go and play with my new toy?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure." My parents, I mean. So I'm sure they're just like, "Okay, well, I guess our daughter is going to be recording a lot more podcasts soon, like now, because she has a microphone." And I do. I love it. And my dad was like, I have like a camera and a microphone like somewhere in the house. And I was like, babes, I don't have the confidence right now to do a visual podcast. So we're going to carry on with the audio. But now you can just hear me and hopefully hear me a little bit better. Yeah. Even then, the reviews on the microphone weren't the best, but oh well. Well, there were quite a good few ones, but then also ones I would say, like, it didn't work. So, yeah. But my mum always used to say to me, Sophie, wear clothes as much as you can because you will get your money's worth from them. Like, she always used to say to me as well, like, she always used to kind of say in a roundabout way, is that every single time you wear a piece of clothing, like, its value decreases by half. So, look at the micro right now, it has decreased its value by half, like £9.5 or so. And then it will become like 4 and a bit, and then 2 and a bit, then 1 and a bit. And it will be like infinitesimal, whatever the word is, in value, and you will have gotten your money's worth. So if this lasts me until Christmas, then I'll be pleased. I'm just going to use it up until, it stops working. And yeah, because I don't know what the best microphone is. Like, genuinely, I am a layman in terms of knowing about tech, surprisingly. Like, I can work it, as in, like, I know how to access apps and, like, figure out settings and, like, stuff like that. But then I start to get bored and, life. So I can figure that out that. But I can't tell you what the best, like, computer monitor is. That sort of stuff. I just kind of go for the cheapest option and hope that the cheapest option does what I need to do the best. I'm that type of girly, that I can't speak. Anyway, my current interest is China's one-child policy, and I was thinking to myself, oh, why don't I do a little bit of cutesy demure research and thinking about Chinese idols and the fact that some of them have like siblings, but they were born obviously during the one-child policy. So it kind of made it a little bit more difficult, thank you, Daddy, for them to have them. But, as always, things can, change in policies and, like, stuff like that. Like, I'm going to explain it as we go. And we are going to use real, fun, cutesy data, I guess. I don't know. This is like a part of the ongoing thing of just random episodes where you're like, why is this an episode? Like, why are we talking about this? But then also, can you go even more in depth on this? Like, it is strangely interesting to me. Like, I will, don't worry, I will actually get onto the point in a minute, but for some reason, like, I randomly get really interested in like roads. Like, for some reason, for like a weekend, I was so interested in how roads like do stuff. Which makes no sense. I have to explain more. So when in like America, they had to start implementing these like features in a road to get people to stop speeding. And so they would like down like a busy residential street, they would like plant a tree and like curve the road a little bit inwards into like the lane and stuff, which would force the driver to have to slow down and, you know, not hopefully run the kids down. Like, it's a very strange thing to be interested in. And like I would listen to the stuff about it, and my dad would be like, "What are you watching, Sophie?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just watching stuff about roads." And when did this start to go on? And so like I get into really weird stuff like that, for example. And there are just stuff that I'm generally just interested in, like anyway. Like horror films. It's weird. I don't even like horror films at all. Like, I'm actually actively scared of horror films. But yeah, I have watched quite a few actually and been scared. Oh yeah. So so that's always a funny thing. Wow, we've already been recording for 15 minutes. We've not even talked about China. See Daisy. Anyway, so Jun from 17, he has a younger brother. He has a young half brother. Isn't that the right thing? Yeah, from his mum. And he, like, the sibling's called Wen Fengzhen, and his nickname is Yang Yang, and he's 10 years old, 10 years younger than Jun is. And you might be thinking, but Sophie, you just said that they can't have more than one child. Well, I hate it when YouTubers do that, where they're like, well, I'm going to tell you why this is a thing. That was just extremely awkward. So basically, in 1953, Chinese leaders at the time suggested that the population should be controlled and were making a law about contraception and abortion and like stuff to do with preventing people from having perhaps unwanted children and like having multiple amounts of children, because like at the time it was like at least 700 million Chinese citizens, which, you know, at this point that doesn't seem that many. You know, we have like 8 billion, right? Like that doesn't seem to be that much, but at the time obviously that was a significant amount of the population. World population. When did we reach? I'm just gonna like not talk, and then I can see if my typing sounds. I feel like I feel like a kid that's like freaking out about like their new toys. World population milestones. That's what I wanted. Okay. By 1950, it was only 2 billion, which again, that seems insane, of like 2 billion people. But then also, if over like a quarter of those people are Chinese, that is a lot. So obviously it does kind of make sense. But obviously the law on the contraception and the abortion thing were paused, later abandoned due to the political upheaval and the 1959 to 61 famine. I did not know that they had a famine. So then in 1970, the population exceeded 80 million, which, you know, again, that isn't as much as it is today, but considering that was what, like 25, 30, 55 years ago, that is a lot. Like that was 1970. That was already 3 billion on its way to being 4. And if like again like under a quarter of your population is Chinese, and it does kind of make sense, but then how they implemented it and how stuff happened, it's insane that it did. But it's also like, well, I guess it does sort of makes sense. I'll explain in a second. So China in 1975 adopted the slogan "late, long and few," encouraging couples to have only one child and urging them to have no more than two. And I assume like the late, long and few would be like have them later in life and then have them for a longer period of time and don't have that many. It's very strange. But I'm sure it makes sense on like the Chinese language in terms of like the sayings. So in 1979, then the Communist Party says couples should have no more than one child. A new marriage law says that couples are obliged to practice family planning, placing a de facto limit of one child for each family. And then in 1984, China adjusted policies allowing for a second child in some families in rural areas and for couples who were both an only child and in some other specified circumstances. Then in 2001, new laws decreed to better manage the administration of the policy, including penalties for unapproved births, which meant the law allowed local governments to impose fines for additional children. And then in 2013, they added an exemption to allowing two children for families in which one parent rather than both is an only child. And then in 2015, it was scrapped. The whole policy was scrapped, allowing all couples to have two children for the first time in more than 3 decades. Then in 2021, it was done 3 children in May, and then in July, the whole thing was scrapped. Which it was kind of strange actually, like experiencing all of that in like real time. Because obviously, like when I was in school, when I first kind of learned more about when it started to take place, when it was kind of implemented, it was like 2017. So we then learn as an addendum that like it had been like changed to 2 children, but then like it wasn't until I did further research then when I was older that I found out that it changed to 3 and then completely scrapped. So, as much as like what it kind of meant, like what it kind of seems on the page is like, oh, well, I guess it does kind of make sense because then you can kind of funnel all of your resources and stuff into having one child, like, as in you can put all of your love in that one child, but then it also means that, like, if you have another child and that kid is basically gonna probably be put up for adoption. And unfortunately, a lot of like at the time, couples wanted boys. So then, if you had a girl, that girl would more than likely have been abandoned on like doorsteps. And unfortunately, a lot of those kids then ended up passing away if they weren't found in time. I love that this microphone changes color. Genuinely, I just kind of wish like you could change like the combination of colors because that would be cool. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking about this microphone, even though it is fun. But yeah, some more information. The policy was introduced to control like the rapidly growing population because like leaders thought that it would strain resources and hinder the economic development and stuff of the country. And it was enforced through a system of incentives for compliance, like financial employment, and penalties for violations, which would include like hefty fines at the time. And like the enforcement methods were kind of based on making contraceptives more widely available and unfortunately more extreme methods such as having forced abortions and mass sterilizations. And Jelly is coming back from the next door neighbors. Okay, but there were exceptions, obviously. So, like, if you were extremely rich at the time and you wanted an additional child, you could just pay the fine and such. Or if you lived in a rural area, even before obviously it became a rule, it was a lot less cared about. Because if you lived in like farmlands, then I guess having more than one child would be a lot more beneficial since, more souls, more people to help on your farm or something. And if you lived in like a more populated city, and you had a girl and you didn't get rid of them, then you could try for a second one in hopes that it would be a boy. Yeah, if you had a girl, you could try for a boy. Yeah. Oh, well, that's interesting. Okay, so I'm looking at a good old BBC News article that was actually from when the change was implemented. Sorry, I don't know why, but sometimes when I start talking too much, I just become really congested. It's very, very, very annoying. So, you're trying to learn a little bit more. So, yeah. So obviously, like in the countryside, like you would have like, I guess, like officers, like the police maybe coming around every 5 years, maybe, I don't know, come around to make sure that you didn't have more than one child. But it wasn't like as in they were going to take your children away from you, I suppose. They would just be like, "Oh, shit, well, I guess they've already had a child, so yeah, can't exactly take the child away from them, so I guess you'll have to take it. You'll have to keep it. I don't know." So yeah. But when obviously when parents would end up having girls, and particularly if they were like home births, I guess, they would just either put them into like an orphanage, or they would put them on just random doorsteps, or into like, I was talking to my mum and she said that like they got put into like bushes to unfortunately just pass away. Which, it's, I feel really bad for like all of like everyone that kind of didn't get to live, that didn't get a chance, is what I'm trying to say. And it's just awful. But yeah, in the wake of all of the males or the boys being kept, it did mean that China's gender balance has been skewed more towards males. But hopefully with like the fact that the policy has been kind of not just one for about 10 years now, nearly 10 years, that the girls can kind of... Oh my god, it actually nearly is 10 years? That's insane. That's creepy. I didn't intend for that at all. Yeah, that it does kind of bring up the girl population a little bit more. So yeah, why it was abandoned was that the experts warned that China would be the first economy to grow old before it's rich, largely due to the one-child policy, and that by 2050 more than a quarter of the population would be over 65. And that the country's fertility rate was one of the lowest in the world and well below the rate of 2.1 children per woman required to replace a population across generations, and that China's aging population will slow down the economy as the pool of young workers decreases and the ratio between taxpayers and pensioners continues to drop. So the rules have obviously always been kind of relaxed. Kind of. Not so much like in places like Beijing and like Shanghai and like places like that, but I actually don't know names of any countryside places in China, which is what we're discovering. China countryside. I don't know. Because obviously all the big places are going to have real big populations. So you could, in theory, just have multiple children and... Well, not multiple, but like 2 or 3 children and it kind of be okay. Because obviously in the 80s it allowed, like the relaxation allowed for those rural families to have another child if their first was a girl, which is what happened with Han Jin from TWS. His sister was born in 2001. He was born in 2006, and then he had 2 more brothers. One in 2011, I believe, and then the other in 2016. We'll just have a little check, but that also kind of triggered my desire to want to talk about this today. This isn't scheduled, this is just for funnies. Yeah, 2011 and then 2016. So yeah, obviously when like his sister was born, his parents would have then been allowed to have another child, which then produced Hanjin. I don't know where Xinjiang is in terms of like if it's in. Oh, it's an industrial city on northern Henan, and it's an important city on the Beijing Shanghai Railway, and it's a city. And then Central Plains urban agglomerate. I'm not even going to try. That is interesting. So it's kind of, I guess, near to the countryside. I don't know, bro. I don't know. It could be. Yeah. But it has 6.166 million people, including 3.639 million urban residents and 2.527 million rural residents. So that does make sense. So it's like the to the south of Xinjiang is Yuan, and then Huizhou, and then Huishan, Weibin, Hongqi, Mue, Fengquan, and then Yanxin, and then I guess it does kind of go down to Beijing. I don't know. So I just like assume that Hanjin's family was allowed to then have other, like his younger brother, and then by the time his second younger brother was born, he like it wouldn't have mattered. I guess I'm just looking at his middle school because it does say it's the Henan Normal University affiliated middle school for you. But yeah, no. So the policy, it it did kind of hurt those in the bigger cities. If you were in a bigger city and you were poor, it would have been very, very bad. But if you were in a rural city, you would have been okay because they didn't fine people who were poor, thankfully, for having multiple children. But those who were poor in those bigger cities, then unfortunately, they wouldn't have been so lucky, And I would actually love to talk more about this sort of stuff, but there's only kind of so much that you can do, like right now. I think, Jelly wants to go. So yeah. Thank you as always for listening. Hopefully the podcast improves now that we have a fun mic. Yeah, please do tell me. But as always, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you guys again very, very soon for a brand new episode. Bye.